Hello and welcome to Health Coach in a Box. I am your health coach of my internet, and I'm super excited to have you here with me today. Okay, so we are going to talk all about how your diet affects your mood. As someone who deals with depression, right? And I shared my journey about that. I shared some of my journey of dealing with depression. So if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. So I really want to talk about how food, right, affects depression. We don't always think about that. We think about, okay, hey, how many calories does this have? Is this going to make me gain weight, right? But the thing is, it's deeper than that. What you eat doesn't only affect your body and how it looks and your size and all that stuff. It affects a lot of things, including your gut, right? And you want your gut to be healthy because it directly affects your mood. It is when you have a gut that's all in disarray, it can lead to depression and anxiety and other types of mental disorders, right? So we want to make sure that we are being mindful of the foods we eat. And this is another reason why you want to work to unprocess your diet, right? Because food matters. It matters. It matters what you put into your body every single day. And even though people are like, hey, it's okay to have a cheat and do this and do that. But really, whenever you eat, you need to be mindful and think hey, is this serving my greater good, or is this affecting me negatively? Is this feeding death or feeding life? Literally. Okay, so let's hop into it. Let me just share my screen. Um, I like doing the little mini presentations. So let me know if this is something that you're digging. Okay, so the name of this presentation is Feeding Your Mind: How Gut Health Impacts Depression. And I just want to start off by saying, yes, I'm a health coach. No, I'm not a doctor or a therapist. This is just stuff that I have learned from my own research, because I'm a research junkie. So from my research and also from just life experience. Okay, so all this information is for informational purposes only. Always do your own research. Okay, we are all about empowerment here, right? So you can listen to me. I'm going to share what I've learned and things that I know, but always double check. Always go back and do your own research. So we're going to talk about the bacteria. Okay, so when you eat a highly processed diet, you are feeding the bad bacteria. And we don't want to do that, right? Because in our microbiome, in our gut, we have a mix of good bacteria and bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria, is good. We need it, right? But the thing is, you don't want it to get out of hand. How do you do that? Eat ultra processed foods. When you eat ultra processed foods, the bad bacteria get out of hand, right? We want to keep feeding the good bacteria. And why? Because the good bacteria helps you to create the neurotransmitters, right? Like dopamine, serotonin, GABA. Those things are important for mood regulation. And the amount of good bacteria you have directly impacts your body's ability to produce these neurotransmitters. Right. So if you're eating the McDonald's and the carryouts and the Popeyes and the Papa John's and all this stuff, you're feeding all of the bad bacteria. And the good bacteria is hey, what about me? I got to eat too. Right. So that's why I said everything we eat literally matters. Are we feeding life? Are we feeding death? Right. Okay. Moving along. So when you eat whole plant-based food, right? When you eat those kind of foods, it helps your body to it helps your body not to deal with chronic inflammation, right? Because chronic inflammation, well, let's go back. What is inflammation? It's the body's response to harmful things. So if it's viruses or bacteria that we don't need in our bodies, or some kind of threat, right? The body is hold on, we got to protect our human, right? We got to protect our human. So the body starts to become a little inflamed, right? Inflammation happens. It's not a bad thing. The bad thing is when it is chronic inflammation, right? And when the body is chronically inflamed, it causes these molecules to be created called cytokines, right? And it's not the greatest thing, because if you have too many, it literally travels up to your brain and it can affect brain functioning. It can literally affect if your body's able to produce these neurotransmitters, and it can affect cognitive health and everything. It literally affects your brain functioning. So we want to be mindful of that. And then like the cytokines, it travels along the neuroimmune system, and that's the nervous system and the immune system connection. Okay, so the neuroimmune system. And that's why like it's important to know like everything is connected. Everything. And that's why I am really into encouraging holistic healing, right? Because we can't just isolate and focus on one thing. Like everything is connected. And then when you look at your body, you see like everything is connected. The nervous system is connected with the immune system. Like they have a direct relationship, right? So once again, when you eat plant-based foods, it helps your body to stay in the proper balance of inflammation, right? Not too much, not too little, just enough, right? When you eat ultra processed foods, chronic inflammation occurs. And that's when the cytokines, too many are released, it travels to the brain, affects cognitive functioning, and it affects your mood, right? So we want to be mindful about making sure we eat whole plant-based foods. Okay, so next, still on the topic of inflammation, right? So when you're eating all of the ultra processed foods, it literally affects your HPA axis. And what is that? That's the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axes, right? And when the body is constantly inflamed, when the body is in a state of chronic inflammation, it causes dysregulation of the HPA axis. So basically, think about it like this. So when the hypothalamus is part of the brain, right? It senses stress. It's like, oh, okay, I sense some stress. I sense something that's not right. Okay, so it releases this hormone called CRH. Okay, so just keep that in mind. CRH, right? And then it travels, okay? So it travels to the pituitary glands, and it's like, hey, like the body's going through stress. We got to make sure, we make sure our human is protected. So then the pituitary glands disseminate this hormone called ACTH, right? So it's like, hey, okay, boom, ACTH is there. And then it travels down to the adrenals, which is above the kidneys. And it's like, hey, like, stress is happening. We got to make sure we protect our human. So then the adrenals are like, oh, okay, cool, I got you. So it starts producing the cortisol, right? So in a healthy body, in a body that's functioning properly, once the adrenals start producing the cortisol, then it tells the hypothalamus they can stop producing so much stress hormones. It tells the pituitary gland they can stop producing so many hormones because the adrenals got it, right? But in a body that's not healthy, that is the gut microbiome and everything is like a little off, right? All of the stress hormones are firing. So you got the cortisol and the adrenal glands going up. You have the pituitary glands pumping their ACTH, and then you have the hypothalamus pumping the CRH. Like it's a lot, right? So the body can't take all of that, right? And then these elevated cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, right? It directly causes an imbalance in key neurotransmitters. Okay, so I don't want to get like too nerdy on y'all, but it's definitely like a connection, right? So too much stress hormones, it affects like if your body can produce the dopamine, right? The serotonin, the GABA, okay? Like it's all connected. Like it's all connected. Also, like too much stress, the stress hormone can create a smaller hippocampus. And we don't want that to happen because that's directly correlated to depression, like depressive symptoms. People who suffer from like depression, they more than likely they may have like a smaller hippocampus, right? Because all the stress in the body. And then when you have elevated cortisol levels, right, it affects your sleep. And then it just creates this vicious cycle of sleep, of depression and stress, and they can't sleep, and then like it's just like this vicious cycle, right? So that's why we want to focus on unprocessing those diets, because we don't want our bodies to be in a place of chronic inflammation, because so much can happen, like so much. And then the last part of this is impaired neuroplasticity. So when you eat a diet of ultra processed food, it impairs the neuroplasticity of your brain. And basically that is the brain's ability to adapt to change, right? And to make connections. So for example, you have a harder time recovering from stress right? Things you get stressed, something happens, but you have a harder time coming back from it. Literally because of too much inflammation in the body, which is caused by many things, but primarily what we're talking about right now are processed foods, right? So harder to recover from stress, harder to adapt to changes. Like something changes in your world and it's too much to handle, right? That's directly correlated to neuroplasticity. Okay. And then this automatically worsens any depressive symptoms that you're already having. So it's really important to just like be mindful of what you eat. I'm going to stop my share. Like, be mindful of what you eat because it affects you in so many ways. Like, your gut health is everything. And that's what they call it, like the second brain. And most of like the serotonin and stuff is made in the gut, right? So it is really important to make sure you are eating those whole plant-based foods so that you can, have a better mood and work on that gut. Like the gut is everything. So I hope you found that helpful. I know that was a lot of information, but sometimes it can be helpful to kind of understand like what's going on inside your body, right? And it helps you to make better choices. You're like, okay, well, maybe I won't reach for those McDonald's French fries because I don't want to deal with chronic inflammation, right? So that's all I got for you today. And it was a pleasure having you here. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Peace.